joined by Mr. E.O. Peace, and I'm going to just call him a teacher, even though he's a retired educator, but he's still teaching, not in the classroom, but the world is his classroom. The community is his classroom. And he teaches about healthy living, yoga, the same things that Mrs. Reed was talking about, but he gives it from a yoga standpoint as well as veganism, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brother
Now you heard the Mrs. Reed on the first part of the show.
Yes,
talked
sir.
about the importance of diet, the importance of the proper mindset, prayer, meditation to healing, and you been doing yoga almost 50 years. How important is yoga?
Well, the goal of yoga is self-realization. I'm drawing very heavily from the book called the Bhagavad Gita. I think last year we talked about the Bhagavad Gita and how Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Gandhi, and a lot of other great teachers have related to that particular book. That's called the most authoritative book on yoga in the world today. Originally spoken in Sanskrit on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, according to Indian sources, over 5,000 years ago. The first teaching of yoga is that we're not the material body. Most of us in the West are drawing very heavily from Greco-Roman European civilization, and it draws from the basic premise that the real self is either physical, mental, intellectual. We say the real self is that pure intelligence, and that we all have this basic pure intelligence. We call it the light of divine intelligence at the very basis of our being. And this divine intelligence informs consciousness as well as awareness. It pervades and transcends consciousness and awareness. So the goal of yoga is union with this divine intelligence. In fact, the word yoga is a Sanskrit word, and it means union, yoke, union. So the goal of yoga is union with the Supreme Being, which we call the light of divine intelligence. One might call it God, one might call it Allah, one might call it Buddha nature, one might call it Brahman, one might call it the greatest spirit. In some parts of Africa, we call it Jinyami. In East Africa, we call it in Swahili language, Munga. In fact, in Swahili, we say Munga ni moja. That means that Munga, this all-pervasive, omnipresent, omniscient, supreme being, omnipotent, supreme being, pervades and transcends everything, everywhere. It's smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest. So we say it's not just great, it's the greatest. It pervades and transcends even the spaces between subatomic particles. So it's smaller than the smallest, bigger than the biggest, and it's pure intelligence, that light of divine intelligence, which is the basis of all being. So the goal of life, the goal of yoga is union, to reawaken, to come back to your real self, the supreme being.
Does it have a healing component to it?
Most definitely so, because and I want to talk about, if we have enough time, four different kinds of yoga that I'm specializing in. The first one we call Jnana Yoga, J-N-A-N-A. It's when you're accumulating knowledge, you're gathering knowledge about who you are, what is God, what is the goal of life, what is the best idea for humanity, and how do we attain it, how do we achieve this higher state of being, how do we know God, and to be honest about it. So Jnana Yoga is when we gather knowledge about this. So the next stage, after we start getting enough knowledge about it, we enter the next stage is called Bhakti Yoga. We become devoted to it, devoted to this truth. And truth should set us free. Someone might ask, well, what is truth? Well, is it setting us free? Free from what? Free from anger, free from lust, free from greed, free from illusion, free
disease.
Pardon?
Disease, free from disease.
All those are diseases, diseases. Anger is a disease, if you will.
Yeah.
Lust, but actually we might start with lust first, because lust is such a disease that when we get greedy. We don't get it, we get angry. So we have anger, lust, greed, those three. really bad on our nervous system. So this, after you get into what we call Raj Yoga, we would like to work it out from Karma Yoga to Bhakti Yoga to Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga means we're working for the Supreme. Everything we're doing, all that we do, all that we offer, all that we give away, we're doing it as an offering to the Supreme. Okay, so meditation, which comes under the head of Raj Yoga, is about keeping thoughts out of our consciousness. I know there are some teachers who would say that the real self is consciousness. Some might go a little bit higher and say the real self is awareness. But we found out, according to our research and our experience, that this intelligence is what informs consciousness. Consciousness is also informed by awareness. But both of these are pervaded and transcended by intelligence. So that supreme intelligence, the more we link up with supreme intelligence, the more we can free our consciousness of thoughts. Because these thoughts make noise, and these thoughts can be very, very detrimental to our nervous system, according to the kind of thoughts that we're entertaining.
You know, it's interesting that both you and Mrs. Reed, talked about the spiritual aspect.
Yes,
of it,
we are spiritual
how,
beings.
Yes,
yes,
and
yes.
how God sent it must be in order for us to be whole, in order to,
Yes,
in
yes.
order for us to have healing.
Uh-huh.
Now, but the average person goes through life, the stresses of life, and how often should one take yoga? Is this yoga like going to the yoga studio and taking an hour of stretching and moving?
That's hatha yoga. That's the beginning of yoga. It's good physical exercise. But as we said, the goal of yoga is not just physical exercise. The goal of yoga is union with what we call in the Western countries God. And we're calling here the light of divine intelligence. So to be still, to be quiet. We've heard about be still and know, right?
Yeah.
We had an old gospel song we used to be saying, be still, God will fight your battle.
Yeah.
God will fight your battle if you just be still. But we haven't been taught how to be still. So to begin to be still, we use what is called mantras. Man means mind, tra means to deliver. So what happens, you take a name of your supreme being, whatever supreme being that that is omnipresent, omniscient to you. Omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient to you. So whatever name you take, if you feel
Sure.
that your supreme being has a name Christ or Jesus, take that name and call it out all the time. What is happening here, you're associating with that holy name, and it's keeping thoughts out of your consciousness at the same time. So now you're making progress toward the goal of yoga, which is realization, experience of your supreme being. And no matter what we're doing, we can use more intelligence. See? Intelligence is plugged into what we call the omniscience of God. The omniscience, all-knowing of God. So the more we get closer to God, the more intelligence we have to apply to whatever we're doing, whether we're teaching math, or whether we're the mayor of a city, or the governor or president of the country, or whatever. Whether we're military people, military people can really gain from the practice of meditation. Yoga and meditation, because I know it has helped me as a former military person.
You know, and I want to say that we are taping here just before Memorial Day.
Yes.
And we have to remember all those young men
Definitely
that
so.
served. You a Vietnam vet,
Yes,
so am
yes,
I.
sir.
All
Yes,
those
sir.
young men, we want to remember them.
Mhm,
And I'm sure
definitely
on
so,
Memorial
definitely
Day, we will do whatever it is we do. But I want to mention one thing. In our city, you know, listen to you and listen to Mrs. Reed, the amount of knowledge that's here in this town to be shared. But yet we have one of the most unhealthiest people, the most unhealthiest city in America is Macon, Georgia. Especially the African-American community. Our life expectancy is shorter than others. Yeah. The COVID has wreaked havoc on us because of the immune systems is poor.
Yeah, right.
So how do we get this information to the greater community?
Well, we start first with ourselves. I know there are some who say, well, let's make sure that I've made up my own bed before I start trying to save the world. But we say by the study, the real practice of this yoga that we're teaching here, you start getting yourself organized around the supreme organization, which is our supreme being. So get yourself together first, and then radiate out from there to those who are closest to you, to your community, with shows like this, which is very informative, and hopefully the world can the world will be benefited by it. But
And it will be seen on the world because we're on YouTube, so make sure you share it, let people know it on the world. Get some good information here.
Yes, and it does depend on any material considerations, because just because we have a lot of money, that doesn't mean that we don't have any mental agony or conscious suffering. So we want to know how to quiet down, to quiet the conscience, keep those thoughts out, because thoughts make noise. They really do. And so we want to be still, be quiet inside. Consciousness quiet, awareness quiet, and as we do this, the consciousness, awareness, and our lower intelligence aligns with that supreme intelligence. See? And as this happens, that supreme intelligence flows down. We say it comes down through your pineal gland. We also call that the third eye. But as this lines up, then we can apply this intelligence to be better at whatever we're doing for the good of the universe, if you will. But it has to be for the good. And we have to follow righteousness. Otherwise, we can't line up. The consciousness will entertain all these far-out thoughts, very negative thoughts. So we want to be still, be quiet. So we try and treat others as we would like to be treated, and to love our supreme being with everything we have.
Well, I think you haven't said it all, because there's so much more to say, but unfortunately we're out of time.
Indeed,
but thank you.
And thank you, Brother Mayor.
Well, thank you, Mr. E.O. Peace. Our brother Peace is a friend, but he's more than a friend. He's a community, he's a conscience. He's a person, when I say a person of conscience, he's a person that keeps his pulse on what's going on in his community and trying to educate and trying to enlighten as many people as he can, especially people of color, as to where we are sojourned and how do we get out of some of the morass that we are in. Let me welcome you to our program.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, you know, when I say raising the level of conscience, I had people on this program that we talked about voting, and primarily we're talking people being kicked off the voting roll. They're primarily African Americans. We talked about people on Section 8 and needing houses, living in poverty, primarily African Americans in this community. We talk about the veterans, that homeless veterans and so forth, and disproportion of them are African Americans. How do we get in this position and how we get out of it? It's just a lack of knowing who we are, a lack of what? What's your take on it?
Well, I'm concentrating on yoga, meditation, and veganism since I retired from the system here.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've been at this for a number of decades now, but I've been able to concentrate on a lot more since I retired the year before last. Now, the first teaching of yoga is that we're not the material body. And this is an illusion that most of us in the world are working under. Some kind of material designation. I'm black, I'm white, I'm Vietnamese, I'm European, I'm dog, I'm cat, I'm so many different material designations. But the first teachings, and these teachings of yoga are basically, well, there are teachings of yoga in ancient Kemet too. Most people call it Egypt. So this particular spirituality is drawn from Nile Valley civilization, as well as Indus Valley civilization. As you know, Nile Valley, and you've been on at the beginning of the Nile there, Jinja Uganda, and Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley, of course, is in India. Now, the oldest teachings of yoga, oldest written teachings of yoga that I know about, are from the Bhagavad Gita. Although the Bhagavad Gita is drawn from the Upanishads, and there are people out here in
That's from East India.
That's East India, yes, sir. Although there are some teachings of yoga in the Medu Netra from ancient Kemet, which most people call Egypt. And you know that Egypt has its origin in East Africa.
Yeah.
So the first teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, the first teachings, revolves around the fact that we are not the material body. We're not the body with the soul with the body. And the soul is oftentimes identified as being pure energy, pure spirit, pure awareness. I know there are some teachers who say that this self is consciousness. But if we go a little bit deeper, we'll see that there's an awareness here. There's an awareness of consciousness itself. So that we say that ultimately that supreme awareness is the self.
So you link things back to spirituality.
We are spiritual beings, yes. We call it soul, we call it energy, we call it awareness, but we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And there are spiritual beings having a dog experience, a zebra's experience, etc. But that supreme consciousness, that supreme awareness that links us all together, that's pure energy, pure spirit. So we all of us, all sentient beings across the spectrum, we have infinitely more in common than we have in difference. And we can never move toward perfect union if we have all these differences out there. But if we're all moving toward the same center point, that same ultimate awareness, then we can come together in greater unity, for greater harmony, greater peace, greater prosperity in our community.
So the difference between churchgoers and a spirit person being spiritual, because we have more churches in Macon than any place on earth. So if we just said we went by the amount of spiritual houses, if you will, houses of worship, then we would say we're the most spiritual people in the world, given our location. But you were saying there's a disconnect.
Well, if we look back at in Martin Luther King Jr.'s briefcase, the one that he had in Memphis, Tennessee. The last time I looked at it, some years ago, he had 2 books in there that are very significant to me. He had his well-used Bible. Oh, there were 3 books in there. The Strength to Love, his well-used Bible, and Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community. In the last few pages in his Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, he was talking about the value system is messed up. The essence of his conversation was that our value system is messed up. So I'm saying that our value system is based on materialism. And the basis of that materialistic value system is that we're thinking that we are the material body. So we're saying that this spiritual revolution entails a belief, a basic change in our basic concept of the self. Now most of us are laboring in the materialistic value system. We're thinking we're the material body. We're saying come to the spiritual value system. See the self as spirit. We can also call that awareness. We're looking out through this body. We're not the body with the soul, we're the soul with the body. And so this is our nonviolent spiritual revolution, which can bring us together. We can never be satisfied through the material body. This is why we throw away so much. We can never be satisfied. The kingdom of God is within, but we're going outside.
But we are on the eve of holiday season where we have Black Monday and Black Friday. People are fighting to get into the stores to get a TV, and then we're going to put all this stuff underneath the Christmas trees at Christmas time, material things. Stuff that, so you're asking, what would be your instruction, if you will, or your advice to people as they get ready to go out and do all this?
Let them continue to do this. However, we say take a name of supreme being. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that my name is better than your name. That's divisive. Whatever name of supreme being that you have, that you find favorable, call out that name.
Yeah.
Call out that name unceasingly, as unceasingly as possible. Call out the name and see yourself as spirit. Keep on buying the toys, keep on doing what you're doing, because this is a gradual process.
In other words, you're not asking people, let's get rid of materialism. We said you can have that along with your spirituality.
We're saying, well, if you take the name of the Most High, whichever, we know the supreme being, one of the names is God.
Yeah.
One of the names is Jinyami. One of the names is Allah. One of the names is Brahman. We might even call it Buddha nature, but it is one. It's that supreme being that is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. It's at the very foundation of all awareness. And this awareness is the witness of consciousness. And we're all spiritual beings. Yeah. But the problem is, the reason we're having so much difficulty throughout the earth, and throughout the universe really, is that we are identifying with being a material body. And we can't ever have any real fulfillment any peace through the material senses. And the eyes, the nose, the tongue, the belly, the genitals. We can't get any real satisfaction, any fulfillment there. So we're saying, well, don't you continue to do your Christmas shopping, continue everything you do, but change the way you look at the self. Consider changing the way you look at the self. Consider this. Consider, you see, this should be, we should be able to analyze this in a very systematic manner. And it should make sense. If it doesn't stand out of reason and common sense, then leave it alone. But all we're suggesting that you can consider doing, see the self differently. See the self as spirit. Yeah. Looking out through the body and chant or call out a name of supreme being. Continue to do this. And what does this do? Association brings assimilation. The more we take that name of supreme being and call out that name all the time, by association, we become purified. Purified of what? Anger, lust, greed, which give rise to illusion, madness, and envy. These are pollutions of the consciousness. These are calcifiers of the pineal gland, our third eye. Yes, sir. I do have a website. It's called everlastingomnipresentpeace.com. And it's about yoga, it's about meditation, and it's about veganism. Which is
what you put in your body.
Yes, to try to live, not live to eat, but to eat for a healthy life, a healthy, holy life. And we'll see that our diet can help us to be better stewards of the earth.
Yeah. I'm going to have you back. I want to have an entire 30-minute program just on diet, spirit, the whole body, how this works, and how it can benefit our community.
Yes, sir.
Given
how we can
where
work
our
together.
community
yes,
is
sir. How
right
we
now.
can work together across all these divisions of race and creed and color and genital and all this other stuff. How we can unite as one to move toward a more perfect union.
Well, we've been talking with Brother Peace, a friend of mine, a Vietnam veteran, mover and shaker in this community. When I say a mover and shaker, he moves your mind, gets you to think about who we are and why we're here, our purpose, our conscience, our relationship with God and with one another. And we thank you very much for sharing with us very briefly, but please come back again.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.